starting this new series that we've titled A Tour Through the Wisdom Book. So the wisdom books are Psalms, Proverbs, Song of Songs, Ecclesiastes. And today we're going to be looking at the book of Psalms. I don't know how much you know about the Psalms. It seems like everybody at some point in their life reads through the Psalms. But the Psalms, there's about 150 Psalms. About half of those are written by David. And originally, the title for the book was Telahim, which in Hebrew means praise songs. Our words and Hebrew choirs would sing just about all of the psalms. And then our word Psalms comes from the Greek word psalmoi, which means songs of praise. So that's what they are. And when you read the Psalms, you realize there's this common theme of, you see, Psalms take us from sorrow to joy. They take us from pain to healing, from brokenness to being well, from defeat to victory, from sin to forgiveness. There's that trajectory that we see all the way through the Psalms. When you read the Psalms, you get the story of David. You kind of see the narrative of David's life weaving its way all the way through the Psalms. I don't know how much you know about King David, but he starts out, he's born in about 1035 BC. His father is Jesse. He has 7 brothers, 2 sisters, and he's the youngest, so they send him out to take care of the family's herds of sheep. He writes a lot about sheep, doesn't he? And he ends up being out alone a lot. So he starts playing the harp and starts composing music. And so that's where the musical David comes out. He also ends up fighting off bears and lions. He's very good with a slingshot. Maybe you know that, but that's David. And so when you look at the Psalms and you start reading them, the Psalms break down into several major themes. Today I want to look at 3 of the themes of the Psalms. And the first one is this: there will be trouble. All right, when you read the Psalms and you look at David, especially the ones that David writes, they're about trouble. David is in trouble all the time. And all of us in this room, at some point, we all have times of trouble. Maybe you're facing trouble right now. There will be trouble. I know this is true because just 3 Sundays ago, I was driving home after church, and I'm driving home, and I'm trying to get home quick. I'd gotten out of here a little later than I wanted to, but I need to get home quick because it was one of my son's birthday, and all our family was coming over. And then as I'm leaving, I just start driving, and my wife texts me and she says, hey, we're out of propane for the barbecue, and it's just the law of nature, isn't it? When you need to grill, there's never propane. Anyway, so now I've got to hurry home, somehow get propane on a Sunday afternoon. I don't know where you do that. And then just as I'm pulling out of the stoplight where I was texting her, I hear this thump, 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 and I realize I've got a flat tire. And so I pull over by Bashadona's down here. And, I had known the tires were worn on the side of them. They say 2017, but I thought, man, there's more tread on these things. Anyway, it delaminated. It just completely came apart on me. So I look at it, and I'm thinking I could call Geico, all right? But I know I'm going to have to wait an hour. Plus, my dad taught us that, sons, you change your own tires. I think men need to change their own tire. You can't have another grown man change a tire for you. So I'm thinking, I text my family, I'll be there in 15 minutes. I'm going to time myself. I think I can get this thing changed in 10 minutes and be on my way. So first of all, I get out the jack. I start jacking the car up, and I'm in my Sunday best now. I'm down under the car on the asphalt, trying to get the thing. I'm jacking the chassis. Has this ever happened to you? But the tire is staying on the ground, all right? The shocks are extending. The springs are going down. The tire's not lifting. I get the jack all the way up, and the tire's still on the ground. It's like, doggone it. Well, let me get a win here. I thought I'd go get the spare off the back. So I took the lug. I go take the cover off the spare, go to unbolt it, and I see that there's a locking lug on there. The guy I bought the car from 12 years ago thought someone was going to steal his spare, so he put a locking lug on it, and there's no way I can get it off. So defeated, I called Geico, all right? And I stood there very defeated while another man changes my tire. Like I can do it. I really can. Jesus was right, wasn't he? When he said, in this life, there will be trouble. A flat tire is the smallest of the trouble. In this life, there will be trouble. And when you read the Psalms, you see that many of the Psalms, especially the Psalms of David, are about trouble. Let's start with Psalm 6, verse 2. And this is a Psalm of David. Have mercy on me, Lord, for I am faint. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are in agony. Man, have you ever felt like that? My soul is in deep anguish. How long, Lord? How long? Turn, Lord, and deliver me. Save me because of your unfailing love. David is in trouble, big trouble, and he's pleading for help. Life will have trouble. There will be trouble. In fact, a lot of the Psalms, there's a whole category of Psalms called the Psalms of Lament. Really, they're just the Psalms of complaint. And you have David and some of the other writers saying, God, where are you? Life hurts. Here's one of the Psalms of Lament, Psalm 10. Why, Lord, do you stand far off? Why do you hide yourself in times of trouble? I don't know if you've ever felt like that. God, are you hiding yourself? Where are you? How long will you let me go through this trouble? And when you think about your life and life in general, trouble takes many, many different forms, doesn't it? Trouble can look like a broken relationship. Trouble can look like a hurting marriage. Trouble can look like a friend who's turned against you. Trouble can come in the form of work trouble. Maybe you have conflict with a supervisor, conflict with a coworker. Maybe you have legal trouble. Or maybe you have family trouble with a son or a daughter or a mother or a father. Or maybe the worst of all trouble is when you lose someone that you love. And if that's happened to you, I'm sorry. I know, unfortunately, I know what it feels like. It's the worst of trouble, isn't it? And so the Psalms, I just want to remind you as we start this morning that the Psalms are for anybody who's facing trouble, because life will have trouble. David has all kinds of trouble, doesn't he? David has work trouble, all right? He's got a coworker named Joab. He leads the army. Joab wants to kill him. You think you have bad coworkers? This guy wants to kill him, all right? That's the worst of the coworkers. David has women trouble. We know this. He gets in a lot of sin trouble because of it. David has family trouble. He has his own son, Absalom, is trying to kill him. Maybe you've had conflict with your sons or your daughters or your father or mother. This son wants to kill him. Here's what we read in Psalm chapter 3, and it's titled, A Psalm of David when he fled from his son Absalom. Lord, how many are my foes? How many rise up against me? Many are saying of me, God will not deliver him. And maybe you felt like that. Arise, Lord, deliver me. My God, strike all my enemies on the jaw. And then he says, break their teeth. I don't know if you felt like that. But my point is, we all have moments like this, whether you are affluent or poor, whether you are young or old, we will have trouble. Some of the trouble, it comes because we made bad decisions or poor choices. Some of the trouble just happens to us. You get sick, you have a car accident, your company shuts down. But the Psalms starts to give us hope. The end of the Psalms is not that there is trouble, but the Psalms also gives us some practices, okay? And so this morning, I want to share some of those practices as challenges with you. And the Psalms we read, and we see this in David, when you are in trouble, and maybe you're in trouble right now, practice prayer. And that's where I want to start this morning. I think most of us, some of our trouble is small, some of it is big. Whatever it is, start to practice prayer more. Half of the Psalms are Psalms of prayer from David, coming to God, pleading with God when he's in trouble. And so I want to invite you right now to put this practice from the Psalms, to practice it right now. So could everyone in the room, could you bow your head and close your eyes? And I want you to look inside at your life right now. And maybe there's something that's so heavy on your heart. You feel like your soul is being crushed because it's so much trouble. And with your eyes closed and your head bowed, I want you to pray silently to God. Say, God, here is my trouble. I want to give it to you. Be honest. Maybe you haven't even been honest with yourself about the trouble and what needs to change. So right now, with your head bowed and your eyes closed, would you meet God silently in a time of prayer? Let's do this together, church. I said today we're looking at 3 of the themes in the Psalms. And the first one is, there will be trouble. But then the story of Psalms and David doesn't end there. Because next, a second major theme is, you'll get through this. Because God is with us. Because God is there. You will get through this, so don't give up. There's this one great line there's a lot of great lines in Psalm 23. Most of you know it well. In Psalm 23, we read in verse 4, even though I walk through the darkest valley, I will fear no evil. Why? Because you are with me. And I really love that David has this word, through the darkest valley. We're not meant to stay in the trouble. We're not meant to remain there. Trouble, it was never meant to last forever. Psalm 34, verse 19, the righteous person faces many troubles, but the Lord comes to rescue every time, each time. Isn't that great? That's you. You're the righteous person. If you're facing trouble, you'll get through this because you have a God who's with you, so don't give up. This is a major theme in the Psalms, to trust God that he is there in the trouble to get you through it. Psalm 46:1 reminds us, God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. He keeps reminding us that God is ever present. God is with us. He's not somewhere. This is a major theme of the Psalms and David, is that in the middle of the trouble, God is there. You're not in it alone. He's the one that will get you through it. He's your source of strength. He's your source of courage. He's your source of power. Here's one of my favorite Psalms of all, Psalm 18:2. Write this on a Post-it note. Take a Sharpie and write it on your mirror or on your rearview mirror in your car. I don't know. Anyway, the Lord is my rock, my fortress, and my Savior. My God is my rock, in whom I find protection. He is my shield, the power that saves me, and my place of safety. I love all of the metaphors that David uses here, that God is his rock. He's his Savior. He's his protector. He's his power. He's his person, is his God of safety. That's what David sees here in these metaphors. Psalm 40, verse 1. So when you're in trouble, where is God? God is with us. And when you're in trouble, you've got to remember who God is and what he does for us. In Psalm 40, I love that God isn't just with us, but God goes into action. Never forget that when you are in trouble, God is acting. I just want to look at one line here, verse 1. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud, and he set my feet on a rock. So David is in a sea of trouble, just a boatload of trouble. We could say he's in a swamp of trouble because he says, I'm in a pit, I'm in the mud, and it's terrible here. But then he says, God reaches down and pulls me up. I love that picture of what God does. In the middle of our trouble, he lifts us up. He'll put you on that rock. He'll put your feet on solid ground. And God goes into action when we're in trouble. Psalm 137, verse 4, he reached down from on high and he took hold of me. So I share all this just to remind you, is that you were not supposed to stay in trouble forever. Maybe it feels like the trouble you're in is never going to end, but I want to say it will, that God is faithful to come and to rescue and to pull you out. So don't make the trouble your home. Don't get comfortable with it. Don't think that you have to live with it. I want to remind you today that God is faithful. That's why they call him Savior, to pull us out when we're in trouble. So I said I want to share with you some practices when we face trouble. The first practice was to pray. The second practice is that when you're in trouble, then practice perseverance, practice endurance. Don't give up. Get through it. Psalm 40 says, I waited patiently. And the psalmist is saying, I waited, I was patient, and then God shows up. And I want to remind you today that God shapes us when we persevere. David, when you look at his life, his faith was never perfect, but David just kept going. He just kept enduring. He just kept persevering. And everybody feels like quitting. Maybe you feel like quitting on a relationship right now. Maybe you feel like quitting on a son or a daughter, or quitting on a friendship, or quitting a job. I want to say, no, persevere. God will pull you up. And you think you're the only one that feels like quitting. No, all of us at one time, everybody in the room feels like quitting. And I think that when you persevere, when you practice this practice of perseverance, God is shaping you. I think there's a kind of spiritual formation that only happens in our lives when we're going through trouble, when we're going through something hard, that we see God and what he does in our lives in a new way. I was at Man Camp last weekend, and a lot of the men in the room were at Man Camp. It was amazing this year, and thank you, men, for coming. And by the way, everyone who didn't go, mark your calendars. Yeah, I'm sorry, you missed out. It was powerful. You got to come next year. Anyway, so while we're there, I got to know two young guys named Jordan and JP. Now, Jordan, I knew was from the Grove. JP I'd never met before. So, and they're about 24 years old. They're recent college graduates. And I said, JP, how long you been in the Grove? He said, well, about 2 hours. We're in Mexico. But I said, well, how'd you get here? He said, well, I'm from Michigan. And so I said, well, how in the world do you end up at Man Camp from Michigan? And so he told me, and then he shared it with everyone at Man Camp. He said it was Easter weekend, and he was driving back to his home where he was living and working in Lansing, Michigan, but he had left Grand Rapids, and he's driving at about 9 o'clock at night. And so it was dark, no one's on the road, so he's just praying. And he said, I just started talking to God. And then he said, I realized that mostly all of my prayers, I just complained. I asked God for help, like all of us do here. Isn't it true that 99% of our prayers are prayed when we are in trouble? And so JP said, I realized I was just praying in trouble, and I wasn't really offering to do anything for God. So that night, I decided to change my prayer and to pray differently. So I started to pray, God, what do you want from me? Which is brilliant, because most of the time we're saying, God, this is what I need from you. Instead, JP, 24-year-old JP says, God, what do you want from me? And he said, as I'm praying, then I pray this. I said, God, I will do anything you want me to do. I just want to say, be very careful when you pray that. You don't know what's going to happen next. He said, I'll do whatever you want me to do. And then he said this, I prayed, God, I'll go anywhere you want me to go. God, if you want me to go to Mexico, I'll go to Mexico. He said, I prayed that. He said about 3 seconds later, I'm not making this up. He said he's not making it up. He said about 3 seconds later, his phone rang. And it was his buddy Jordan from here. He's in Michigan. Jordan's here. And Jordan said, hey, JP, I've got a strange question for you. Would you go to Mexico with me? And he said, JP said, Jordan, I think I have to, because I just told God I would go anywhere, even to Mexico. So I'm in. And Jordan said, I'm leaving in a week. He says, I'll be there. And so he showed up in Mexico. I just want you to see that in the trouble, we think all we have to pray about is trouble. God will start to change us and shape us and use us. Oh, by the way, I've got a picture of these guys here. And there's JP on the left and Jordan. And those guys were hard workers. And I just share this to say, when you're in the trouble, God will lift you. We have another picture of them. God will lift you up. He will lift you up. So I said today we're looking at 3 of the themes, major themes in the Psalms. There will be trouble. That was the first one. The second theme is, but God will get you through this. He will. And then the third theme, major theme all the way through the Psalms, and David is good at it, is to celebrate the victories. Because there will be those moments when you realize, wait, God just pulled me out of a lot of trouble, so celebrate the victories. I'll mention Man Camp one more time. I got to spend the weekend celebrating a victory with a gentleman I got to know over the weekend. His name is Eric. He's from the Grove here, but I didn't know Eric's story. And Eric, when I met him, shared the story of his last few months with me. What happened is Eric told me that he had been working for a large auto manufacturer here in Arizona, but over the last 6 months, 4 months, things have gone bad. The company has spiraled financially. They weren't making it. They filed for bankruptcy, and so their entire production facility in Arizona was shutting down. And so over the last few weeks, he said Kyle, who leads our men's ministry, Kyle Ray, had been contacting him and saying, hey, Eric, are you coming to Man Camp? You need to be at Man Camp. And Eric said, well, I would tell him, hey, Kyle, how can I go when I'm losing my job? Everyone in our plant is losing their job. He's an engineer, by the way. He said, I don't know what I'm doing next. I have $200 even seems like a lot. Because I don't know if I'll even have a job in a week. And so he said he was super discouraged. But then a week ago, Monday, this was Monday, Man Camp was last Friday. On Monday, he said some executives from Lucid were coming, which is an electric car company, had come in to look through their facilities. They were buying the plant that was closing. Lucid was taking over the facilities, and they toured the plant. Then these executives asked to meet with him. They sat down with him, and they said, Eric, we've heard about what you've done here, and we know that everyone's leaving this company and is being let go. We want you to stay. In fact, we want you to be our chief, our head engineer of all production here. And so Eric, when he came, he said as soon as those men left his office, he picked up the phone and he said, I called Kyle. He said, Kyle, I'm coming to Man Camp. And so Eric was celebrating the entire weekend, and I got to celebrate with him. It was a great weekend hanging out with Eric. And I just want to remind you that every day is ripe with opportunity for you to celebrate. Some of them are small, some of them are big, like getting a new. Eric just didn't get another job. Eric got a promotion when he thought he was losing his job. God fills our lives with moments that need celebration. David, by the way, was great at celebrating the victories. Look at one more psalm with me, Psalm 118, and we read, my enemies did their best to kill me. You're in bad shape at that point. But the Lord, you rescued me. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has given me victory. Songs of joy and victory are sung in the camp of the godly. That's you here, by the way. The strong right arm of the Lord has done glorious things. The strong right arm of the Lord is raised in triumph. By the way, it sounds like God is right-handed. So everybody who's left-handed in the room, I'm sorry about that. And I hear you're good at baseball, like you can pitch and things like that. I thank you for answering my prayer. That had nothing to do with this. And giving me the victory. David was so good at celebrating the victories, wasn't he? When he defeats Goliath, he leads the dancing back in Israel. We read in 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, that when he captures the ark from the Philistines and brings it back, we read this line, David danced before the Lord with all his might. David was good at celebrating the victories that God gives him. And maybe you're not so good at it because you have people around you that are bringing you down. Don't we have celebration killers in our lives? You know people that are pessimistic and they see the dark side of everything. I had one friend that always found the problems in everything. I finally called him the prophet of doom. Every time I said, you're the prophet of doom. You just need to back down right now because there are celebration killers. Like, for example, the NFL. The NFL is bad at celebrating. You know what they did? So in 1983, there were 5 wide receivers who played for the Washington Redskins. And they started, after every touchdown, they started to celebrate in the end zone. They were called the Fun Bunch. Some of you remember them. And it was great watching the Fun Bunch celebrate. But the NFL is down on celebration. So because of the Fun Bunch, the NFL passed a rule. And the rule said, if your feet leave the ground in celebration, it's a 15-yard penalty. Are you kidding me? How can you score a touchdown and not let your feet leave the ground? And so the NFL passed a penalty. They called it excessive celebration. That's what they named the offense. I think we all need more excessive celebration in our lives, don't we? By the way, one of my favorite excessive celebrators right here is Ezekiel Elliott. There we go, right there. It's worth the 15-yard penalty. Jump into the Salvation Army bucket. But I want to challenge you to look at your life, look at your home. Is your home filled with complaining? Or is there excessive celebration? We can move on to something else with the slides. There we go. We can do that. Thank you, Ezekiel. Or is your home filled with celebration? I want to challenge you. When someone in the house gets an A, everybody goes to froyo. That's what you need to do. When your wife or your husband gets a promotion, everybody gets Krispy Kreme donuts. You have to practice celebration to get good at it. And you've got to be intentional about it. That's my challenge to you this morning. Yesterday, we got to have an excessive celebration moment here at the Grove, by the way. Do you know what happened yesterday? Yesterday was our first graduating class, first 4-year class graduating here at Justice University. And so there was a lot of excessive celebration. By the way, one of our graduates, Kareem, is on the front row. Kareem Parks, congratulations, buddy. Thank you for that. And so I said I want to challenge you with a practice. And the final practice I want to challenge you with is this one here. When God gives you a victory, no matter how small, then practice praise. You see it all through the Psalms, that David is practicing praise. We have a bass player. He's not here. He's not playing this morning. His name is Marshall Westbrook. And every Sunday when we meet in the green room, before we come out, he won't let the band leave until he says, "What time is it?" And the band has to answer, "Praise time." Praise time. Yes, they do. They got to say praise time. Jesus. There we go. We're praising Jesus. So, church, I want to remind you to become a person of praise, to let that be on your lips. We have this great line in Psalm 34. I will exalt the Lord at all times. His praise will always be on my lips. So, church, stand up. Let's stand up, and may the praise of God be on your lips. When you have trouble, never forget God will get you through this. So start to praise, start to celebrate. It's good to worship with you today.